Some brands offer you low finance, or cashback, or servicing.
Renault don't do ors. We do ands. The Renault Mujere with 1.91% APR and €1,000 cashback and 3 years servicing, saving you thousands. Renault, the brand with the ands. Visit your local Renault dealer. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.
Blog Talk Radio. Bienvenidos a WEXP 88.3, donde lo hacemos mejor. Soy Evelyn Bernal y este es mi programa Entre Mujeres.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and happy Thursday. Today is Thursday, right? And I hope that you are having an excellent week. If you're not, just remember we are almost to Friday. So you probably don't know that this is the second show that I will do in English, so I do want to do a disclaimer before. I'm sorry if I get jumbled up with my words, but I'm very excited to reach another, be able to come and kind of share my topics with you in English today, although it's kind of a challenge for me. But I'm really excited about our topic today because I feel that emotional boundaries are one of the bigger reasons why we have family issues, relationship issues that seem so complicated. But if we are educated about emotional intelligence type of topics, especially setting limits in relationships, I truly believe 100% that the quality of our relationships gets better. And not only that, but our interactions in our relationships get better and our quality of life. You know, just to restate it, it's very important. So let's get right to the topic. I do want to thank you for joining me. My name is Evelyn Bernal, and you are listening to Blog Talk Radio on WEXP 88.3. Emotional boundaries are a topic that is a bit abstract because it's obviously something that you don't see. It's invisible, but I'll give you some tangible examples so you can understand where I'm coming from. So a type of boundary or limit, and we can use that word interchangeably. For example, when we are driving down the freeway, you know, for those of us who fail to recognize those little square with numbers, those are called the speed limit, right? And then depends on where you're driving, that's the speed that is assigned to that area. For example, here in Arizona, if you're driving down the freeway, usually like down I-10, which would be I-10 for us, the speed limit is 75, right? And, of course, if you're going through a school zone, it's 15. And if you're going through, you know, sometimes speed limit is 5. So what is the purpose of a limit? Well, we'll get there. When you go visit someone at a home, you go to the house, and the first thing you see is a door. The door is an indication that before you go and greet, you know, the individuals in that house, you knock on the door and, you know, ask for permission to come in. So in essence, a limit is a physical limit is something that we can see and sets guidelines for how you are supposed to behave in those circumstances. Well, to translate it into relationships, into everyday life, emotional boundaries teach us how to behave with our couple, with our family, with our children, and also through emotional boundaries, we teach others how to treat us. So in essence, it's very, very important to understand the concept of emotional boundaries. So I will give you an example of an emotional boundary. An emotional boundary is understanding, okay, I'm having a problem with my child or with my spouse. Sometimes, or I don't want to generalize and say for women, but sometimes there are individuals who are over-responsible when they are having conflict in a relationship. And sometimes being over-responsible in a relationship makes you feel like you are the one that needs to fix the problem because there's no concept of an emotional boundary. So one example of an emotional boundary is this my problem or is this the other person's problem? Now, why is that important? Well, if this is my problem, then I have control over it, and I have the ability or the authority to fix it. But if this is not my problem, then I have to accept and understand that I might not be the person that's able to fix that problem. However, I can identify whether will I accept this problem in my relationship or in my family? Will I accept it? Will I put up with it? And will I tolerate it? That is an example of an emotional boundary. There are countless number of times where I have talked to friends, individuals, and they're having some kind of issue with some kind of relationship, whether it be a friendship, whether it be, a romantic relationship, and some conflicts arise, and they're feeling concerned and they're feeling confused because they say, I really have nothing to do with this, and yet I'm taking the blame for something that I didn't create. Well, if this is the case and if this has happened to you, then this will be a perfect topic for you to stay tuned to, because sometimes if you can identify whose problem this is, then we can look for a solution accordingly instead of just sitting there and blaming everybody in the household, which we all understand never gets anything done. So in essence, a boundary is those invisible limits that we establish to protect our emotions. Just like when you drive down the freeway, speed limits are there to protect you and to protect your passengers. They dictate, like, in this road, under these circumstances, this is the speed that is safest to drive in. And it's the same thing when we set emotional boundaries. Setting emotional boundaries and physical boundaries can protect us from being emotionally hurt, being emotionally taken advantage of, and it also protects other people, because if I have personal boundaries that are appropriate, then I am going to be a respectful person towards somebody else, and I am not going to violate their boundaries. So let's go into healthy boundaries. What are healthy boundaries? Well, number one, if you have healthy boundaries, you are a flexible individual. You are a flexible woman, meaning that you are able to stay both close and distant, and you adapt to a situation. And again, very complex concepts sometimes. However, let me give you an example of somebody that isn't able to be distant and to be close. There are individuals that are always working on opposite ends of emotional boundaries. They either absolutely love you or they absolutely hate you. Well, when you have a healthy boundary, you can be in the middle with a person. You can be close with them. You can have a relationship, a conversation, a quality interaction. But if you perceive that this person is being disrespectful or did something that was not of your liking, you're also able to set a healthy limit. Hallmark characteristic of a good boundary. You are able to be close and you are able to be distant depending on what is going on. You are able to let go of relationships that are destructive, and you are able to connect with relationships that are nurturing. Just think about this. How many times I think I lost you there for a minute. I don't know if we're having technical difficulties, but we were talking about being able to be distant and being able to be close. How many times, or have you been in a situation where you were in a relationship and this relationship was toxic for you? However, it was very difficult to let go, even in spite of the fact that other people told you this relationship isn't healthy for you, even though this relationship was causing you issues. Well, that's a perfect example of an unhealthy boundary. And an unhealthy, when a female has an unhealthy boundary, she can't let go of something that is destructive because she is afraid of the emotions that are going to follow. She is afraid of the feelings of, I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss him. What if he never comes back? And so we don't have the coping skills to deal with that. So we blur our own emotional boundaries, and we put up with disrespect, and we stay in a situation that is destructive to our emotions. And I have heard individuals say, I have seen examples, and I think that in my personal life, I can think of examples as well where I connected to people that weren't really healthy for me. It was difficult to let go, and so in an attempt to kind of hold on to that, what we do is we keep on feeding this dynamic that is unhealthy. We keep feeding it, and we allow our boundaries to be violated or blurred. However, when we establish healthy boundaries, we are able to connect with relationships that are nurturing. We were talking about, going down the freeway, being in a school zone, and knowing that the speed limit is going to be 15, because going 15 in a school zone is going to keep children safe, right, from harm's way. Well, same thing for emotional boundaries. If we establish healthy emotional boundaries, we are able to protect ourselves from being exploited by others, because you're able to read the cues that somebody is abusive or selfish. Just think of how many of us we start a relationship, and this individual, this woman, this man, gives you cues that they are unhealthy in some way. They do things that seem selfish at times, and we are able to, we have no insight into it. We ignore the cues. And so when we have healthy boundaries, and when we realize that somebody is being unhealthy for us, we're able to identify it right away and set a limit, an emotional boundary, and say, you know what, I feel like this is very selfish behavior, and then start looking at ways to work on it. However, where there isn't healthy boundaries, and the individual will see that this person is a little selfish, and that they're out to look for themselves, and they're scared to say something, because they feel like, oh, well, if I tell him or her that she's being selfish, he's gonna leave or she's gonna leave. So I would rather not have healthy boundaries and then allow this person to exploit me. Well, healthy boundaries are there, again, for your protection and for the other person's protection, because if I am a person who has healthy boundaries and somebody disrespects me, I am able to set a healthy limit, because boundaries are targeted. The purpose of emotional boundaries are to teach others how to treat us. In other words, we teach them that in order to interact with us, they need to be respectful. And healthy boundaries are also being connected. We can engage in balanced relationship with others and maintain them over time, even when there is conflicts, because we are able to work them out. Again, we're not being either distant or we're not being completely disconnected. We're finding ways to find a middle ground. Whew, are you guys overwhelmed yet? I have a daughter, and because we feel like these topics are very adult-like, but my perception is that if when I was growing up, somebody had educated me on what an emotional boundary is, I think that I would have avoided myself a lot of grief and heartache. Unfortunately, we learn these things as we go along, and sometimes, unfortunately, there are individuals that never understand how important it is to have healthy boundaries, because, again, healthy boundaries keep us safe in relationships, and healthy boundaries keep us connected. So when are boundaries a problem? Well, boundaries are an issue in relationship when they are too close or when they are too distant, and this is why. So person whose boundaries are completely open, they are completely flexible, right? So you ask somebody in let's say that I'm a person that isn't able to set a boundary. So if my spouse asks me, hey, can you do this? Even though I can't really do that, or it's going to put me in a situation where I'm going to neglect something that's important to me because I don't have, like,